Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf here. No Gavin today, but I'm joined by a special guest. I have Stacey Patton with me. You might know him as at Stacey Patton 89 on Twitter from the Strickland, here to play a little game of buy or sell. You might have heard of this game from Around the Horn on ESPN. They did this for years. Maybe still do it. I don't know. But we're going to talk about Julius Randle's playoff struggles this year, RJ Barrett's playoff leap this year, and how much Emmanuel quickly might be worth, and play a little game of buy or sell right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks, and I want to remind you guys today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. Make sure to hit the notification bell on YouTube or the auto download function on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode, and you can become an everydayer. Catch every single episode because we're here for you guys 5 days a week. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief and Knicks site to Strickland, which you can find strict.land. And he is Stacey Patton, my guest co-host for today and tomorrow, actually. So we're doing 2 episodes. We're playing a little buy or sell. And Stacey, I'm not let's just leave the pleasantries out of it. Let's get right into this because I think we got some great stuff to talk about. So the question here is buy or sell Julius Randle's playoff struggles this year. So here's I laid out like just a small little like pro Julius, anti Julius case here that I think kind of probably overly distills it. But pro Julius, if you want to look at his what could have caused him to struggle in the playoffs, he sprained his ankle 2 weeks before the playoffs, sprained it again after his best performance, or arguably his best performance of the playoffs, against Cleveland in Game 5. But during the regular season, he was really fantastic. 25 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 58% true shooting, and really reformed his game this year, changed things around a lot. And it seemed like maybe that lack of explosiveness, thanks to the sprained ankle, might have hindered him in the playoffs. That said, he did still take the court. So the anti-Julius argument here is that he just did not play super well throughout the playoffs. 16.5 points per game, 8.3 boards, 3.6 assists, almost 10 points less in true shooting, 485 true shooting percentage in the playoffs. And it was his second straight postseason appearance where he underperformed after the Atlanta series. So, Stacey, where are you at? Are you buying or selling Julius Randle's playoff struggles this year?
Stupid question. So if I'm buying the struggles, I believe they are real struggles, or
Correct.
I have to say buy. I don't think they're insurmountable. I think when I say buy, I'm saying I don't think right now this is the player with the decision. If you look at the championship teams in recent memory, they have players that on the aggregate make good decisions, right? That's not to say that everyone's always going to make the right decision every time they have the ball. You watch LeBron James's playoffs. He does some dumb stuff, right? LeBron James makes some of the stupidest plays I've ever seen. I am the last person that will ever question LeBron James's basketball IQ, and I hate that term, so I'll say field decision-making, whatever you want to call it. There's lots of great players that make mistakes. This is not to say that you can isolate a moment of Julius Randle and say, like, he just doesn't know what he's doing. On the aggregate, though, this is not a player you want to have the ball in his hands, having to read complex defenses. Not to question his intelligence, not to say anything about that. It's just something he's not. When I see Julius Randle, I want him at the end of the day getting downhill with his speed and size and touch at the rim, making a difference. If he can't do that, I'm very comfortable with his jump shot when he's not, even when he's defended, really, but I'm very comfortable with him catching and shooting. I am not comfortable with him taking multiple dribbles a lot. And I think that can still be a workable player. He's getting paid in, I think it's like 39th. Alex, you can probably correct me if I'm wrong on that. of players in the NBA, he does not have a bad contract. He is paid like either a low end second option or a high third option.
Mhm.
So it's not that he's not worth what he's giving you on that end. But for those players in the playoffs, I don't think you can like Alex. If there's a player who's a third option on that kind of a team, historically or even today, that doesn't bring value on defense, tell me, right? But Andrew Wiggins is the comp for that, for a guy who like was drafted and paid like the guy who was going to be at least the second best option on the team. Wasn't quite that, but Golden State simplified his role, right? Getting downhill. If you have a mismatch, post him up, take open threes. He showed that like he's not a great off the dribble pull up guy, but he can hit open threes. But he adds a lot of value on defense, and Randle is capable of that. And so I don't want to like. That's why like the sell requires a qualification for me, because I think that can he just be that level of defender, and we get someone else to we might have that player on the roster, by the way, right? The kind of guy who can share ball handling responsibilities enough with Brunson, enough to make Randle in that position where he's either getting downhill, taking shots, or he's getting downhill, taking catch and shoots, posting up mismatches, and helping on the offensive glass. I know that still sounds like a lot, but I do want him to do a lot. I just want, but that is more simplified than what he's asked to do. But he has to add value on defense at that point. And the people, I did a long pod with Schwinn on the Strickland today about this. And, Schwinn made the very good point that he's 28 now. And it's fair to ask if he can do that now, if he can add that to his game, if he can evolve again. But he has evolved, right? He evolved his game in his second year to be better at not defending doubles, at operating against doubles. He's evolved his game to be better at catch and shoot. His decision making has been better. Like there's much fewer pump fakes. And Brunson has helped there. So I don't think he's a guy who I don't think this is a guy that's like, I need, whatever, I don't know what 40, 50 touches or whatever it is a game. I don't think he's that. I think he would be willing to downshift a little bit. I do ask though, is it I don't know if he's going to put his hands up every time. And there aren't a lot of examples of players who have evolved their game on defense like that from where he's coming from, but he has all the tools to do that. So I'm going to say sell, because there's not a lot of precedent for a guy turning into an impact defender, which is what he needs to do, I think, to really be an impact playoff player at this point, given what he is on offense. But that's where my answer for that.
Yeah. So I think so in the end you would say you buy the playoff struggles and that he's probably not. He doesn't necessarily have either way.
I buy the playoff struggles. Yes.
Yeah.
I buy it.
I get what you're saying. I lean the further I get away from this postseason, I almost lean towards a soft sell in this case. I feel like the ankle injury really screwed him up in the playoffs. And I think it's the more, I've seen people in our YouTube comments or whatever, be like, you can't give him a pass. He was out there. I agree with that to a degree. If you're going to go out there.
It doesn't have to be binary. You can say it affected it without giving him a pass, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it affected him. I think that it took away some of the things that made him good during the regular season. And I think as far as the defensive impact or lack thereof, that's where I feel like injuries usually harm guys the most. On offense, if you have your pet moves you can pull those off even if you're not 100%. And I think Randle did that to some extent, although he didn't have the explosion needed to get inside.
He yammed on Allen. He had some dunks, man. I didn't. That's what tells me am I sure the ankle was the problem?
In Cleveland,
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
He dunked on Bam, or at least on maybe it was Love or Zeller, but he had a couple of he wasn't hampered on that end. I guess I'll throw. Sorry, and I'll let you finish for sure. Do you think his defensive effort was in line what you've normally seen from him? Playoffs, regular season.
Man, it's yes and no, at times, but that's the problem. You know what I mean? I felt like he locked in sometimes during the playoffs, but not all the time. But I also felt like he was getting. There were definitely a lot of plays where he just kind of got blown by or just lost his man on defense. particularly in that Heat series when they were running him around.
Kevin Love blew by him.
Yeah, like Kevin Love slipping in backdoor, like
75-year-old Kevin Love.
completely unacceptable in that case. So I mean, yeah, and it's tough to write some of those off to like ankle, right? Like I just more mean like the instances where he couldn't keep someone in front of him and stuff like that. Like maybe that's part of it, but and maybe he was just distracted by the fact that his ankle hurt. I don't know. I I just feel like this one, I know I asked the question and made it binary like this, but this one I almost feel like it's still an incomplete, unfortunately. And we're just gonna have to see what happens. And it might be with the Knicks next year, or it might be with another team if they somehow move him this offseason or whatever. But like I think it's probably kind of an incomplete at this point, because
I'd have to agree
unfortunately,
with that.
yeah, like unfortunately, we just haven't gotten to see. We got to see one sample of him healthy 2 years ago, and obviously
With Alfred Payton as his point guard, right?
exactly, and second year RJ Barrett, all that stuff. So like that story's been written already, and we can write that off for whatever it is. But this year, I feel like we just didn't get to paint a perfectly good picture of what he could be potentially in the playoffs, unfortunately. So but we've got a different guy who had a playoff leap, actually. As most people feel this way, at least. I mean, I know there's still some people that aren't the biggest fan of the guy, but I think he made a leap. RJ Barrett, who we'll talk about in just a second, do another buy or sell. But first, I do have to remind everybody that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. And you can make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now, new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's a lot of dollars. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. And you guys know me. I mean, maybe this maybe wouldn't be the safest bet to make for $2,500, but I'm a same game parlay guy. So I would go make some same game parlays on the NBA finals. And, if I had that kind of disposable income, sure, maybe I'd do a $2,500 one. But otherwise, if you're like me and you want to just kind of have fun and place a couple bets, there's nothing more fun to me than placing like a $5 same game parlay that has like 15 legs to it. Makes you feel like you're Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems. It's a great feeling. Minus the ending, of course, no spoilers. But there's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, and we're back to continue buying or selling. Stacey, we've already come to the conclusion that we've already blown this exercise out of the water in the first segment by being like, you know what, we can't pick one or the other. So it's just proof that there's maybe we're not cut out for takesmanship. We're not quite around the horn material.
Sometimes it's not buy and it's not sell, it's hold. And if you don't have it, then don't buy.
There you go, hold. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But I'm not going to add a hold option. We're still gonna play buy or sell. My next buy or sell is RJ Barrett's playoff leap. So just the quick and dirty numbers on it: 19.3 points per game in the playoffs, 4.5 boards, 2.5 assists. He shot 550 true shooting during the playoffs, which is pretty solid. Then during the regular season, RJ was at 19.6 points per game, 5 boards, 2.8 assists, same amount of assists, crazy, on 53% true shooting. So shot 2% points better in true shooting in the playoffs than the regular season. But I think the biggest thing was he was definitely more engaged on defense, I think, throughout the playoffs, and especially after those first 2 miserable games in Cleveland, got a lot better in that regard. And his three-pointer wasn't falling, and yet he was still finding ways to score. Had that crazy first quarter in Game 6, I believe it was, against Miami, where he had the 8 free throws in one quarter, which is something that he was bringing to the Knicks during the playoff run. So, Stacey, I'll ask you now. RJ Barrett's playoff leap, are you buying it or selling it?
I'm buying it.
Mhm.
I think by the way, in some ways it wasn't like you could say, well, some guys just shoot better in the playoffs. He shot 33% from 3. Like that's still something he needs to improve. I think you nailed it on the head with the defense. His defense and Darius Garland Everyone's defense in Darius Garland. I mean, there were a lot of guys. Quickly was great on Garland too. But him being able to defend Garland allowed him being able to defend Garland and Hart being able to defend Mitchell, both of which were equally important, allowed the Knicks to do things like hide Brunson on a Okoro. That can't be understated. Like, a lot of the stuff the Heat do, and they're getting so much credit for, is because they have so many interchangeable parts and they can be versatile. For as much as Tibbs gets flack for not being versatile, he's able to do some things because of the versatility of the guys like Barrett afford him. There's still questions. Like, I still think it's not even like he's a bad rebounder. He doesn't try. It's just brain farts, or like, I don't even want to call it brain farts, just like weird things that happen when he's in position and he just doesn't get the ball. Is he not trying? No. Is he not strong? No. It's just, maybe those are anomalies. But am I buying the playoff leap? Yes. I think it's a very important inflection point. And I get it. People will say, well, remember Jerome James? Remember, some of these, it's an 8-game sample size, or, it was 11-game sample size. But it was specifically the things that he struggled with during the regular season that he really seemed to improve upon. I could scarcely think of times when he had an open kick out and he forced up a bad shot. Against whether it was Bam, whether it's Jared Allen and, Mobley, whoever. And I think he did a better job. I think everyone on the Knicks, and I think this is a credit to Tibbs, in the past series is very evident that when Allen went out, they went much more aggressively to the rim, and RJ was right at the top of that. And when Allen was in the game, they were much more judicious. I thought that, but I think the number one thing that if you had to say in his regular season that was the most frustrating thing was how many times he went to the rim and would throw up like some falling away, like bad shot, because he could neither get a layup, nor was he willing or able to see the kick out. And it's not fair to say, oh, well, he was kicking out to, like they had shooters this year. It's Quentin Grimes in the corner. That's not an excuse. You have to kick it out to Quentin Grimes to be open three. Had to kick it out quickly. You have to kick it out to Josh Hart. And he wasn't doing that in the regular season. He did that. I thought his like 3 to 10 foot game, which is something that has been something the Knicks emphasize as part of their offense, especially since they're not a great shooting team. He was much better at that. Some of those fadeaways, getting contact, and it wasn't just the shots were falling. He looked a lot more comfortable with those. He looked a lot more comfortable with the rim. It was specifically the things that he struggled with that it seemed to click. And I think that this is a part of the reason I was higher on him even during his struggle is because, at least on offense, I knew that, like, all right, if the problem with RJ Barrett is like just reading the game, like he's a smart player, he's one of the hardest workers in that locker room, that's something he will overcome. Maybe he'll never be a great shooter, but I don't think like not passing out of traffic is going, and like the thing is he still can get 2 feet in the paint at will. That's just always been a thing, even when he's been awful. And now you're seeing the improvement in finishing, which was a thing all regular season. You're starting to see more of that 3 to 10 foot stuff. Allegedly he worked with Drew Hanlon on his 3-point shooting. The results were a little bit mixed. But it was all the things he did better were things that specifically the things that drove you nuts about him in the regular season and are very correctable things. And he showed that he completely has it with him to correct him in the most challenging of circumstances. So I'm buying the playoff leap.
Yeah, I'm buying it too. I think, unfortunately, the playoff leap still left the one thing unanswered, which is his jump shot ever going to come around good enough? And that's the unfortunate part is that, like, yes, I'm buying what he did there, but I'm still not necessarily 100% buying him as like a potential like number 2 scoring option or something going forward. I do think that he proved himself that he could at least be like a number 3 scoring option on a really good team because he was effectively because of either not having Julius for some of the time or having Julius underperforming. He proved that, at least in this case, like him taking the leap was enough for him to be the second scoring option behind Brunson. And on some nights that worked for the Knicks in these playoffs. So, that's he went a long way towards proving that he can be more of that guy. Unfortunately, again, it all comes back to like, will the 3-point shot start coming around? Because that's going to be the difference of can he become like a true number 2 scoring option or something like that. But like you said, he's finally harnessing. It's like he's like had the puzzle pieces for a while as far as like how to get into the paint, but then just wasn't quite putting them together. And it's like he's finally starting to place those last couple pieces that are real easy now and figuring out how to sell contact, how to generate free throws, how to finish through contact while generating contact, while selling it enough, to get those free throws. It's all very valuable stuff that he's learning how to do at just the right time. And I think the big swing thing that we saw during the playoffs that will be the determining factor for him going forward as far as like how high he can go to and if he can reach like a new level as a player is if he's going to be able to use all those offensive skills and be that good on offense and still not skip a beat on defense, which has been one of the bigger issues too. It kind of seemed like there was a correlation between shots started going up, offensive roles started going up, defense went down. We saw that happen as early as last year where he came into the year saying like, I want to be the new Reggie Bullock and defend everybody. And by the end of the year, we were like, RJ doesn't really defend anybody, and he just did not do a great job there. So, I think we're both in agreement. Buy the leap on RJ Barrett. Will the Knicks be buying Emmanuel quickly? More specifically, buying his services for the next number of years? And how much is too much potentially? I will pose that question to Stacy, who is a well-known Emmanuel Quickly lover here. So I can only imagine the direction this is going to go. So that's coming up in just a second. All right, we're back into finish buying or selling today. We are going to have another episode coming up tomorrow where we're going to buy and sell some more topics like if Jalen Brunson can be a top scoring option on a title contender, which I'm sure will be a lot of fun. But for today, our final one is to debate if Emmanuel Quickly, okay. Are you buying or selling Emmanuel Quickly for $25 million a year or more? And so you currently have RJ Barrett, Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, all making around that number, a little more. It would pay him like for Emmanuel Quickly. I did look it up. It's funny you brought this up earlier about how much Julius Randle gets paid relative to the rest of the league. According to Spotrac, and this was taking into account what salaries are going to be next year with extensions kicking in and stuff, it would make Quickly just outside of being a top 50 paid player in the league. His two teammates are in the mid to late 40s and early 50s as far as what they're paid, which just underscores just how huge of a value Randle and Brunson's contracts are, considering where they're getting paid compared to the rest of the league. But even though it's not an enormous number in today's NBA, do you think that's too much for Emmanuel Quickly, considering he's a player that, at least as it seems right now, if he stays on the Knicks, will pretty much be a bench player? Or do you feel like you should kind of just pay him what he's worth, even if it's slightly uncomfortable as far as paying him almost as much as the top 3 guys on the team?
I go by, but I think there's it's a little bit of a Rorschach test, I think. Emmanuel Quickly has been a steal, whether you want to keep him or not, at 25. But he's also the kind of player the Knicks have found value with. At the 34th pick in the subsequent draft, they took Rokas Jokubaitis. He is arguably one of the best prospects in Europe, if not the best. Well, okay, Victor Wembanyama plays in Europe, so he is one of the best prospects in Europe, or has been for a while, very well scouted. And he's 6'4", 6'9", wingspan, can run an offense. I don't think Deuce McBride is on the level of Emmanuel Quickly as a prospect, but he's shown value. Their best player is a point guard. And that's the thing. With Quickly, it becomes, if you want to look at it from the optimist point of view, and this is why I will finally say buy, he can play both positions, and he adds value on defense. So that matters. But as much as you can say that, he still does primarily play the same position as your best player. It is not as extreme a situation as Obi Toppin, who we'll talk about in the next episode, but that's a thing. You said 25 or over. Over is an unlimited amount to about apparently 60 million. I don't know what Quickly's max could be.
I think his max would coming off a rookie scale contract and without any of like the major awards, I think his max would be something like 35 million, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, we'll have to Jeremy Cohen that afterwards.
Yeah,
but
I'll go chat GPT Jeremy Cohen. Ask that, see what he says.
We need actually. Nick's Twitter needs a Jeremy Cohen GPT. That's
let's just load Jeremy's consciousness into the cloud and see what happens. Nothing could possibly go wrong.
Yeah, that and and well-timed puns, or maybe not so well-timed. So I will say. So the reason I say yes is because it is 3 years of him not being a plus off minus player. It's 3 years of him being one of the best plus off minus players in the NBA. And there is tape to back that up about his defensive impact. It's not good. It is great. And the things that are shortcomings on defense, people will talk till they're blue in the face about how Kyle Lowry bodied him twice in the playoff. Schwinn and I talked about this in the Strickland pod. Smart did the same thing to, I think, Gabe Vincent once. And Miami's reaction was like, okay, it's your game plan. You're going to post up Marcus Smart on our skinny point guard defender who's too small. You got me, right? Walter Whiteface. We'll live with that. It's not like, that's just not how, maybe if Andre Miller or Gary Payton makes a comeback, you have to rethink that, but that's just not how it is. The kind of guards who do that are 6'7". Like, I don't think Emmanuel Quickly is going to be guarding Luka Doncic anytime soon. His value is really as a team defender. And you see that show up. For all the struggles and talk about his inconsistency, for his career, he's a 36.7% three-point shooter to not make sure I'm not overstating it, but he's an above average three-point shooter on a very difficult shot diet from three. I think I would go as high as 25. And the last thing I'll say is, like, on top of all of that he has proven that he's a plus impact player. Maybe that'll be an overpay, but this is a guy who's going to, like, he played terribly on offense for much of this playoffs. At least he shot poorly. Alex, his on-off was a +8. Mm-hmm. That's one of the best on the team. So imagine if a lot of it, I do think, was just missing open shots, which, if you want to bet that he's always going to miss open shots in the playoffs, fine. I am not there when he's 23 years old. Those are the things where I'm like, yeah, 20, but 25 is kind of the limit for me. It's just a world where Poole got that. And I do think you have to wonder about locker room issues, right? Like, if you pay him more than RJ Barrett, does that cause issues? Those kind of things. You're probably going to be paying him more than Mitchell Robinson, and Mitchell Robinson's a really impactful player. Does that cause any issues? What gives me a little bit of pause, though, just to make the other side of this, there's two things. One, as I kind of alluded to, the Knicks have had success finding combo guards in the draft, or in the late first round. I think that one arbitrage or one kind of market inefficiency they found is guys who can defend bigger than they are and shoot, because they don't have immediate the most translatable measurables. No one in the draft, people thought of Grimes as a shooting specialist, but he was 6'4" with a 6'8" wingspan. Those aren't ideal measurables for a lockdown defender, and he's proven that he is in that mold. Quickly was the same thing. He was is he a point of attack defender? Well, he's not, quote unquote, really a point guard, but people forgot that he had a high wingspan, so he could guard bigger than he was. With Deuce, I think people bought his defense probably more than the other two, but it was similar things. Even Sims, right? Sims fell because he's, at the end of the day, he's 6'9" on a good day, and the Knicks bought that he can defend bigger than he is. So they found those opportunities. I don't think that's some kind of dogma that they're married to, but they're good at finding that. And maybe that opportunity will go away. But there's a guy in this draft who I think profiles. There's a couple of guys in this draft who profile a lot Quickly, in my opinion. One actually went to Kentucky. His name's Cason Wallace. You know, shot 34% from three, but he was the main point guard. Had to take a lot of pull-ups. Ferocious defender. Can run an offense, pass the ball. Didn't get to the rim a ton, but at Kentucky, nobody does because they always have millions of 7-footers. So guards going back to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Devin Booker have not shown up the same way you would expect them to based on what they did in their NBA production. So they found ways to get those kind of guys. So is quickly irreplaceable for this front office? Maybe not. That's one thing. And the other thing is, he's one of the probably the major stride in his game that he's made that no one would have expected. People probably didn't expect him to be this level of defender, but I don't think people expected him to get to the rim as much as he did and be like as effective. Like people talk about the floater, you know, he's shooting close to 50% in the 3 to 10 foot range, or maybe over it. But he was in that range close to Brunson. He was almost as efficient as Brunson, which is really good. Not the volume, but it's really good. But he was also really effective at the rim, which was like he was horrible at the rim in college and didn't even get there that much. He got there a good amount. I think it was 20% of his attempts were within 3 feet. And he finished well into the 60s. In the playoffs, that went away. Now we faced Bam, and we faced a team with Jared Allen and and Evan Mobley. So that's understandable. But it did turn his offense. It took away an important dimension of his offense, and it took away the kind of dimension of his offense that turns him from, you know, some kind of version of Tyrese Maxey that also has a pull-up and is a better passer to, like, you know, a worse version of Jordan Poole on offense. Do I think he's either of those things? He's probably close to the middle. I don't know that he'll ever, like, there's going to be defenders that can take away his rim game completely. I think he's better than what he showed here. I think he'll shoot better. But that does give you a little bit of pause as, like, is this a guy that's going to always have to rely on craft at the rim? Probably. And there's guys who have made that work, and he's got all of the talent, the work ethic, and the skill to make that work. But it is a bit of like, you have to see that happen. And that combined with the fact that they found guards in his mold in the past and they're good at identifying those guys gives me pause. But I'm still buying on, if we have to go up to 4 for 100, I'll go up to 4 for 100.
Yeah, I go back and forth. It's so easy in this case with Quickly, I think, to fall for recency bias as far as like like the most recent thing in our minds is like he went out with a sprained ankle after not being able to hit a shot like for most of the playoffs. And yet, to your point, you know, you look at his on-off numbers and he had just as much of an impact on like per 100 possessions as he did during the regular season when he was crushing it. So it kind of makes you think like, man, this is a guy that does actually translate to the playoffs where he could still make that level of impact even if he's not scoring the ball. And imagine if he starts scoring it, then things become totally different with him. So I'm kind of with you. I think I would do a soft buy here on the buy or sell in the sense of I don't know that I would go higher than like 25 million either. And you know, if you could somehow talk him into like 4 for 80 or something like that, like 20 million a season annual value, I think you're coming away with a steal. And that's probably what I mean. I would imagine Josh Hart is probably going to command a somewhat similar deal. And I feel like that's kind of fair. You know, I think that they're two guys that are going to work really well in tandem together. They're two guys that are going to impact a lot of games with their defense and with what they bring on offense as well. Obviously in different ways, but you know, I think it's pretty fair for Quickly to do that and then be like, you know what, if you want more than that, next contract, you'll surely earn that if you know if things continue improving at the rate that they have been. So we'll see how it goes as far as Quickly's new deal. Obviously, we have this offseason. For anyone unfamiliar with the timeline, he can get extended by the end of this offseason. Or he can hit restricted free agency next summer, which then allows other teams to potentially bid on his services and the Knicks to match it. It'll be interesting to see what the Knicks decide to do and what Quickly and his agent decide to do too, as far as potentially taking a deal this year versus betting on himself, which we see a lot of players doing going into, you know, next season, looking to earn that new contract. I guess that's going to be something for this coming season to see. But for now, this has been Locked On Knicks, and we have another great episode coming up tomorrow where we're going to talk about if Jalen Brunson can be the top scoring option on a title contender, talk about if Obi Toppin is a long-term piece for the Knicks, and if the Knicks should just run it back next year after how good of a year they had this past year, or more or less run it back. So that's all coming up on our second edition of Buy or Sell tomorrow on Locked On Knicks. But for today, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you all soon. Peace out, everybody.